If I were to guess, I would say that the invention of cordage was almost as dramatic a game changer in the advancement of the human race as was the ability to make and use fire. Because suddenly all sorts of important things like shelters, weapons, traps, tools, carry straps for vessels, bags, certain types of watercraft and wind sails, and clothing could all be more precisely and securely connected together. Even now in our modern world, cordage, from the finest threads to the heaviest ropes, serves essential applications in the creation of woven clothing, leather craft, boot and shoelacing, surgical sutures, fish lines, netting, tow lines, tie-down lines, climbing ropes, drawstrings, lanyards, necklaces, lashings, and numerous other common products and uses we often take for granted. Hello everyone, I'm Jim Ballou and welcome to Makeshift Madness. This is where we explore alternative methods for building and repairing all sorts of different things. We get creative, we improvise, and more than anything else, we experiment. In this video, we're going to be talking about cordage. Given the utilitarian nature of cord and the fact that it's an ingredient in so many creative projects, this just seemed to me like the logical topic for discussion with the first of these makeshift videos. We're going to consider some of the popular types of available cords, most suitable for bushcrafters and hobby crafters. We're going to examine various ways in which to utilize cord, and we're going to learn how to make our own cord from commonly available materials. So I hope you'll stick around for it. Also, real quick, I'd like to take this opportunity to share with the viewers this knife. It's a knife which I put together for a friend of mine recently. I spent quite a while doing it because I was distracted a lot. But anyway, I'm not a knife maker by any means. That's not what I do. But I had this idea for this knife, the style of it, which I don't know where I've seen this style before, but I liked it. It's kind of thick, it's kind of wide in the blade, but I thought that would be pretty cool. So a couple things about this knife. This is the second one of these knives of this style that I made. I made another one for another friend, which had mahogany handles. I didn't care much for the mahogany. So this one I used oak, and it's very durable. I like it. I like the looks of it. It's a little bit rustic, but I put this hole, it's kind of a large hole, almost ½ inch. And the idea behind this hole is that if you're in the wilderness and you're making arrow shafts out of limbs or whatever you find, you could use this hole as a wrench. So you could kind of kink and straighten out your arrow shaft. And I put a notch right here in the spine of the blade, and the idea there is if I take a ferro rod, I can just make a fire without this sliding all over the back of the blade. So that's the idea there. So anyway, yeah, I built this knife. I don't know when he's gonna pick it up, and I don't know if he's gonna like it, but so what I made this out of, I cut this out of a saw blade. It was a large bandsaw blade, so it's almost an inch, or I mean almost a 1/16 of an inch thick, and it's some kind of spring steel, I suppose, but it seems to take an edge fairly well. It cuts fairly well, so we'll see how it works. And I made this sheath, which is also fairly rustic, but it does function. And I made it so that you can hold a ferro rod with the blade right there, and there it is. So I hope you will enjoy this video. Right now, I'd like to take this opportunity to briefly introduce viewers to two books I wrote several years ago: Makeshift Workshop Skills for Survival and Self-Reliance, and More Makeshift Workshop Skills. Both are available on Amazon or directly from the publisher, Prepper Press, at prepperpress.com. In these books, readers will find chapters on tying knots, making and using cord, blacksmithing and welding basics, including welding with car batteries and even soldering with a road flare, improvised clamps, homemade tools and hardware, flint knapping and stone tool technology, making things out of other things, manually powered machines, all about glues, creative ways to use duct tape, and plenty more. Additionally, a myriad of useful formulas are also included. It's not an exaggeration to say it was literally years of research and experimentation that went into the creation of these books, and I did all my own illustrations. The first book, Makeshift Workshop Skills, includes a foreword written by the late Charlie Ritchie Sr., who founded the popular Backwoodsman magazine. Interested viewers will definitely want to check out these two unique books and others from Prepper Press. Now, back to our topic at hand. Now's a good time to talk about cord and the advantages and disadvantages of each basic type. So probably with most outdoorsmen and bushcrafters, campers, hikers, everything else, one of the most common types of small rope, handy cord, super versatile, is just parachute cord, or often called paracord or 550 cord, because supposedly it has a breaking strength of 550 pounds. A military grade parachute cord is it's a little bit bigger than an 1/8-inch diameter. It comes in all different colors, and different brands are available. But the good stuff, here's how you can tell the good stuff. The good stuff will have nylon sheath. It's a braided sheath, and it has 7 individual and sometimes different numbered individual strands inside it, which can individually be used for smaller cord, like if you needed like an improvised fish line or whatever you need. So it's extremely versatile. It's very smooth. It's nylon construction. So it does have some degree of stretch. If you're under a heavy load, this stuff will stretch. But it's a good durable cord. You can use it for so many things: bootlaces, to a guy line for your tent, you name it. The low quality imitation stuff you normally find will have just a fuzzy interior, just some kind of filler. It'll still be the tube idea, the sheath, but then it'll just have this worthless interior that's not very good. And this stuff is fine if you just need a cord that doesn't need a lot of strength, or you don't need the versatility of regular paracord. It's fine for that. But so that's probably the most common cord that most people will throw in their pack and use, because it's just so extremely versatile. Also, nowadays, it seems like on a lot of videos and everything, they talk about bank line. And so bank line is just this twisted or braided, depending on what you get, cord that is coated with a very waxy kind of almost like a tar coating. I don't know if you can see that very well. Get it in focus. It's very durable, strong cord. It's kind of stiff, but it's easy to work with. It doesn't come apart very easy. It's very strong. So this, I bought this roll. It was sold as number 36 bank line. And I'm not that familiar with the different number grades, but I bought this roll and this was advertised as number 12 bank line. So, you know, if I'm going to take their word for it, this is smaller diameter, but it's still, it's quite strong. And so it's good general purpose cord. I like it for a lot of things. Here's some much thicker bank line type cord. And so I don't know what the size this would be. I've had it for a very long time. You know, maybe it's number 40. I don't know. Anyway, so bank line is another very popular cord with a lot of bushcrafters these days. I think just plain old inexpensive common garden variety jute twine natural fiber cord. It's plenty strong for what I do. It's you know, it's got a lot of strength, but it's natural fiber, and it's very coarse. Why I like this cord, not only is it incredibly cheap, you buy a roll of this for, I don't know, a couple bucks, but what I like about it is this stuff it makes really good tinder. So you got to kind of pick the fibers apart, get some air through there. Once you get it kind of spread apart, and then you know, you want to get a magnesium block or ferro rod or whatever, and you want to get a fire going. You need some kind of flammable natural fiber. You can see how that'll work. That'll you can get a fire going with that. So, yeah, jute twine. Buy it anywhere. Buy it in probably any grocery store, wherever. It doesn't cost much at all. Everybody likes just plain old cotton string. You know, it's maybe a little bit similar to maybe kite string, whatever, but this cotton string, this particular one is very strong. And I usually tie a little overhand knot in near the end. That stops the unraveling at that point. And so I'll generally put, anytime I have ends of this stuff, I'll put a knot in the very end of it. And what I like about plain old cotton string, even though it's, you know, it's natural fiber, it's not going to hold up to the elements quite as good as some of the synthetic cords out there. What I like about this stuff is that you want to tie, like, I don't know, the mouth of a small bag closed or whatever you want to tie, it'll hold, you know, it'll hold the knot really well. It's not really slippery. So I think it's very useful. I use it for a million different purposes, and it's not at all expensive compared to some of them. For survival kits and that sort of thing is dental floss, because it's very small diameter. You can get it waxed, you can get it unwaxed. I like it because if you were to need some sewing thread, it's very fine, and I think it's probably made out of nylon. I think I read that somewhere. But years ago, I wanted to test the tensile strength of this stuff, and I was tying it to all sorts of weights as to, you know, very unscientific experiment. And so what I remember is that it seemed to have a breaking tensile strength of something under 15 pounds. So I think I got to around 15 pounds and it would break, you know. So it's probably about a, you know, 8 to 14 pound, but it's very compact, very lightweight. I like it because you could use it for an emergency fishing line or sewing or whatever you want. Another one that I like for a small thread, strong thread type of thing is B50 Dacron. Dacron is another name for polyester. And B50 Dacron is a very common cord or modern day bowstrings. It's been around for quite a while. I don't know exactly how many years or decades, but you can buy a roll of it. It's not exactly cheap, but it is very strong. And B50, I think what they mean is, I think they mean it's supposed to have a 50-pound tensile strength. Although I've seen all kinds of discussions about that on the internet, and people seem to think of somewhere between 35 and 50-pound tensile strength, generally speaking. There's also a B55 Dacron available nowadays that is supposed to be better than this, but this is excellent stuff. And you could use this for all kinds of things. It's waxed, so it sticks to itself very well. It's very strong. And Dacron the thing about Dacron, it does not stretch as much as nylon. So nylon has quite a bit of stretch, and you would want a lot of stretch, or you'd want a considerable amount of stretch in something like a climbing rope, where you don't want just a shock that would snap the rope if you slipped and on a side of a mountain. So nylon has a bit of stretch, so that's excellent for climbing ropes, and that sort of thing. Dacron, better for a bowstring. Here is a bowstring that I made out of B50 Dacron a number of years ago. I made it for a long bow with a 70-pound draw weight. In this case, the string outlasted the bow. I decided to make it 12 strands thick, not because the bow required a string with that much tensile strength, but because a thinner string would tend to cut into the fingers while drawing such a powerful bow. The rule of thumb on how much tensile strength a bowstring should have, according to an article on bowstrings I read a long time ago anyway, is that it should have at least 4 times the draw weight of the bow. So for a bow with a 45-pound pull, you'd want your string to have at least 180 pounds tensile strength. Also, a string that is too long for a particular bow can usually be adjusted shorter by twisting it. It is not at all difficult to make a good bowstring, especially if you have something as good as Dacron to work with. And in a future video, I hope to cover the process. So this is a very good investment. Buy a roll of this stuff. You'll use it for a million different things. You could even use it for sewing leather. This would be a good leather stitching kind of cord, which brings to mind saddle thread. So you can buy different colors of saddle thread, different types of saddle thread. It can be made out of, I believe this one is nylon. It's some kind of synthetic. This one I think is actually linen. A lot of it is linen, a lot of it is synthetic nylon. But saddle thread is always about the same size or very close. It's very strong. It's excellent for sewing leather. It's waxed, so it works very well for sewing leather. And here's an example of how I would use saddle thread. I used it to stitch up this leather belt, and that's just how I did it. And this is the belt buckle that actually made my blacksmith shop over 20 years ago. It's a bit on the rustic side, which is the look that I wanted to achieve. And so, yeah, saddle thread. I think with these kinds of cords here, you could do a heck of a lot. What we're looking at here is just a section of shrink wrap, strands of shrink wrap that I pulled out of the trash at work. And I twisted it into cord. It's extremely strong. I cannot break it. The process of twisting natural fibers or strands or strips of material is probably one of the easiest things I can think of you could ever do. And so what we're looking at here is just a blade of it's not grass, but it's some kind of plant, unidentified plant out of our backyard. And it's not the strongest thing in the world. If I put very much pressure on it, it'll just snap. So it's not very strong, but for our purposes and for demonstration purposes, I think we can make it work. So one of the first things you want to do if you're going to twist some material into cord, or to see if it's suitable, is you want to bend it on itself. That's the test. So you bend it on itself, you pinch it, and if it doesn't crack or break right there, and it's that pliable, then it's suitable for making cord. And what I'm going to do here is it's a common technique or method for twisting cord. It's, I don't know how long this method's been around, but definitely thousands of years, and it's probably one of the most common types of primitive cords that I know of. So what I'm going to do to start this off is I've got this length of material, and I'm going to pinch it at an offset place. So maybe right about here. I want two running pieces of unequal length, because one's going to run out sooner than the other, and that's going to be the one, when it gets close to running out, we're going to want to splice in a new piece. So that'll be my bend point to start with. So I'm just going to kind of roll it up a little bit at that point, and get it to where I can actually put a kink in it. And so I roll it up, I put a pinch in it right there. And so I happen to be right-handed, so this is the way I hold the cord. I use my left hand for a vise. It pinches and holds the cord. It moves up as I move along. My right hand will do all the twisting. So I get a twist in there, and then what I do is I take, I've got two running sections. I'm going to take the top part, and I'm going to roll it between my index finger and my thumb, and I'm going to roll it away, put a turn or two away from me. So that rolls away. The bottom one, I grab between my other fingers, and then I twist the pair of the two strands toward me. So then I just repeat the process. That's all there is to it, really. Roll the top one away, twist the pair toward me. Roll the top one away, grab the bottom, twist the pair toward me, and on I go. Why this makes effective cord is because you have the reverse twist. So you have individual strands rolling one way, and you've got the pair going the other way. So the reverse twist helps resist unraveling. And the tighter you make it, generally, the stronger your cord. So once you get going, you don't even think about it. You're rolling that strand, you're twisting it back towards you. You just keep going, and it works pretty well. You can do this with grab blades of grass or whatever you find, and you just start twisting them into cord. Now, survival books will commonly mention ideal natural fiber cords, like dog bane. Dog bane apparently is extremely strong for a natural fiber. So there's dog bane, there's milkweed, there's stinging nettle, there's fireweed, any number of inner barks of trees, different kinds of grasses, plant roots, just all kinds of things in the natural world that you can twist into cord. And I'm sure native peoples all around the globe have twisted all kinds of things into functional cord. But you get a good tight twist going on, and you can actually, out of fairly weak natural material here, I'm going to make it would be a cord that you could actually tie things together with. It's not going to be the strongest cord in the world. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it will make a string that could be used. And so you can see it's got some tensile strength, not a ton, but it's got some. And so now I'm coming to the end of my my shorter strand, and it's probably time to lay in a new piece. So I will lay in a new piece. Now, ideally, the piece I'm laying in will have some sort of taper, so it's not so thick at that point. And if it overshoots a little bit, that's fine. You could trim it off later with scissors or whatever, knife, whatever you have. But you lay it in with the strand that's running out, and then you just continue your process. And so you can make this cord as long as you want. You can just keep going indefinitely. Where you splice in, depending on the material that you splice in, or the size of it, I guess I should say, it tends to bulk up in that part of your cord. You know, for a lot of purposes, it's probably not a big deal. If you want a more uniform cord, you would want to taper the new one a little bit down, maybe a little bit more at that point. A neat technique that I remember seeing in a video probably close to 30 years ago, or at least 25 years ago, was shown in a video by the late Jim Riggs, who was an instructor, a naturalist, I think he was even an anthropologist, whatever he was, but he had some really neat primitive skills videos. And so what he explained is that, and I'll just get a piece of this, he explained that if you really want a really strong splice, that you can get your new piece and you can put a kink in it, and you can fit that right into the where the two sections branch off, right in that little notch right there. And now you're working this piece, the top piece and the bottom piece, and so you're working that piece in on both strands, and so it really locks in. So once I do that, now I've got an extremely strong splice. And like he pointed out in the videos, I remember, is that it tends to be kind of bulky right there, because you're actually, until it runs out, you're working with four different parts. And so, but it's not going to pull. It's not going to want to pull out because it's twisted in both ways, and it's really locked in there. So that's a really good method for doing it. So you can tell right now I've made a fairly functional cord right now. I could tie this into, I could tie this into knots. I could tie things together with this. This is not bad. For practice, you want to practice this. You don't have access to suitable natural materials. You can practice, just cut a piece of paper towel. This is just 3/8 section of, or whatever it is, paper towel. So I'll just roll wherever I want to bend it, just roll it up, and then I'll just get a start, and this is actually not a bad way to practice your technique, because you can, remember, you roll away the top one, grab the bottom one, twist the pair towards you. Roll away the top one, grab the bottom one, twist the pair towards you. So once you get going, your brain doesn't even think about it at all. And I think it's the simplest thing I've probably ever learned how to do. And so, I've been, just like at the beach or something, and find some kind of plant material and just start twisting it into cord. And it's amazing how quick you can actually twist cord to get. Now, I've seen techniques in books, and probably Native Americans and others probably used it a lot, where they would get it twisted up and they would roll it on their knee or their leg, and that's probably a very quick way to make cord. But if you want a really tight twist, doing it this way is probably as good as it's going to get. But you can see, once you get a good tight twist going on, you can see it makes a really pretty good string. It's got some tensile strength to it, this thing does. And I could just keep on going. I could make a very long cord. So this is the basic technique. It's been around for, who knows how many thousands of years. Okay, so what we have here is a small clamp or vise I built to demonstrate the constricting force of twisted rope when used like a tourniquet. 2 jaw pieces, in this case cut from a 2x2 square stick of oak, are hinged at the base, and grooves have been filed into the jaws to facilitate gripping the workpiece. Short pieces of 3/4 inch angle iron with holes drilled in them are attached at the base on each side to facilitate mounting the unit to a bench, to a log, or to a stump. And a hole was drilled crossways through the stationary jaw to hold the rope that will provide the tension. I inserted a short dowel into the side of the base as a stop for the tourniquet stick. Okay, so let's go outside and test out this contraption. So here we have it mounted to the top of a stump, and you'll notice that I used eye screws to screw it down to the stump. I like eye screws because you can twist them by hand or use a stick to turn them, or pliers or whatever you have. And then it's a lot easier than with slotted screws. So we'll just go ahead and fit a piece of wood that we will cut into the jaws and twist her up. Get some solid twisting action here. And see how she holds. That feels fairly secure, although I would like my eye screw to be turned in a little bit tighter, so it's a tighter mount to the log. That's pretty solid. Anyway, it's holding the piece quite securely, so we'll just see if it works as a vise. Not bad. So this is a really good example of how twisted cord provides the tension required to make this little homemade bucksaw rigid and make it a functional saw. Here we have a broken wooden mop handle, and we're going to repair it using a little bit of glue and some cord. For this project, I've cut 4 sections of paracord and tied them into small loops that'll fit over the wooden handle. And I've cut some small sections of hardwood dowel. We're going to use Gorilla wood glue, and probably any kind of wood glue would work. Doesn't really matter. Probably a lot of other kinds of glues would work equally well. And for the tourniquet sticks, you could probably get by with large nails. Where I'm going to use some little bit of duct tape, and I'll show you in just a second how that's going to work. Now in the past, whenever I've wanted to make a repair like this, I would be tempted to want to use a C-clamp. The only problem with a C-clamp on trying to hold any cylindrical object is that the jaw pads want to roll off of it. It's really hard to keep a C-clamp centered and to keep any kind of dowel or cylindrical object from rolling off of it. So this process that we're going to do is going to be a whole lot better. It's going to keep pressure applied all the way around the cylindrical object, so it's going to have a better, more even clamping. And now I typically make a mess whenever I'm using any kind of glue, so in this case I put down a piece of plastic bag just to keep the glue off the table, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to put some of this glue into the parts that join, pieces that join, and I'm just going to smear it fairly generously. When you're gluing things, it's always good to, it's best to glue both parts. So this will probably be a good enough mess for us. And we will try to fit these parts together however they go, like this, I guess. All right, so we're just going to fit them together. Okay, now once we have that done, we're going to take some strips of duct tape and we're going to wrap the outside of this dowel. Okay, so like I said, I've got the area of the brake covered with duct tape, and that will help hold the glue in and prevent it from, hopefully prevent it from sticking to our cords. So what I've done is I've passed the cords over the dowel, and as you can see, I've got the larger, they're a little bit larger. They could all be the same size actually, but I've got, if there's going to be any larger ones, I put them in the middle. That's where the twisting is going to take place. And then these outside loops, their only function is to catch the dowel, and once it's twisted up, it'll hold it in place. So let's just go see how this works. I'm just going to find a spot where I want a lot of tension, and I think right here is a good place, right about there. I'm just going to twist it nice and tight twist, and then I'm going to, as best I can, feed it over the retaining loop, and we'll do the same on this side. We'll just crank that thing up. I guess it doesn't have to be as tight as I'm making it, but it's going to be one tight clamp, that's for sure. Okay. There it is. You can see the points of tension where the constricting tourniquet cords are gripping all the way around this, and we'll just let this dry, let it cure up. So this simple repair represents one more example of how we might apply twisted cord or twisted rope to serve our needs. And if we want, after the glue dries, we could always do a nice clean wrap right over the duct tape and really make it look good. And it would also make a stronger connection. Good tight wrap would help hold everything together. Right now, I'd like to introduce viewers to one of the coolest things I've ever learned. And I realize most bushcrafters, at least a lot of bushcrafters, and most viewers probably already know how to do this. It's pretty simple, it's pretty common. but it's just so cool. And so what it is you got these wraps around, in this case a dowel, any cylindrical object, and they're secured together firmly. And I think of it as a no knot wrap binding of something, because you won't, when it's done properly, you won't see any knots. You have these little sections here, you can just trim them off, and it's just a nice clean way to wrap something. You get nice tight wraps. I love this little trick. And so for those who haven't seen it, we're going to talk about it. It technically is a knot, and it's called a whipping knot. And so sailors, back in the sailing days, they would whip the ends of their rope to prevent fraying. Nowadays, they often will use tape, or they'll, if it's synthetic cord, they'll melt it. But the big ropes, they would whip them with small cord. In this case, this is a big hemp rope, which I've whipped with, I think it's number 12 bank line is what I think I did here. But that's what it is. It's called a whipping knot. And we're gonna learn how to tie that knot. We're gonna use a dowel, and we're just going to get a piece of, in this case, parachute cord for demonstration purposes, and we're going to show you how it's done. I'll leave a bite the length of my wrap, or a little bit longer than the length of my wrap. I'll just lay that down along the side, and then I will just start making my bindings. It's easy for me to go that way. Maybe it's because I'm right-handed, I'm not sure. But I mean, you could do it either way. You could do your wraps this way. It's the same. It doesn't really matter. So I just start wrapping, and I leave a little tail sticking out there, and I just start wrapping over my bite. Sometimes you have to kind of hold it together so it doesn't slip around on you, because it will slip depending on how slippery your base is. And I just start, and I keep my bindings as firm as I can, and keep them even and tidy, and just kind of make my wraps as however many wraps I want. And once I come close to the, in this case, I'm running out of cord, so I just take my running end and I just feed him through the eye that's left over from the bite. I grab this end, and sometimes if it's a really tight wrap, you'll have to use pliers to get the grip, and then you'll pull this end, and you can see it draws the little eye, it draws that under your wraps. So you keep both ends as taut as possible, and then you just pull that thing, and it makes a nice tight wrap. It's going to be on there for the duration if you do it properly, and it just makes a really tidy knot. You can, if you do it really strong cord, whatever you use, and you can just trim off your excess if you want. Now you've got a comfortable handle if you need a handle on something. Maybe you need something with some grip. Maybe you need an axe. The neck of an axe needs to be covered with something to give it some sort of shock protection. This is not a bad way to go. Also, if you get a crack in something, you want to strengthen it, you can bind it up with this. It'll help hold it together. Now here's another trick that works, that is nice to know. So if you, let's say you just want a spool, and you want cord that's quick access to your cord, but you want a nice, clean, tidy way to carry your cord. So you can do the same technique, use your whipping knot, and Make however many wraps you want. Keep them nice and close together. I didn't leave myself a very big tail here, but let's grab that guy while we can. And so you make your wrappings. Keep them nice and tight together. And when you come to the end, feed your running end through. And then it's permanent. If you pull that and pulls it all underneath your wraps, it's all tightened up, then it's not easy access. But if you take your running end and you feed it back through the eye, and now you tighten it up. So now you have a little loop, and you can shrink that loop down a little bit if you want to. You can trim things up a bit, and you can cut this part off completely if you want, melt it up, whatever you want to do if it's synthetic cord. But now you leave a little tail here, and now you can carry some cord on a stick or a dowel or a spool, whatever you created. So I got a supply of cord. I want to be able to remove that quick when I'm ready for it. You just got a quick release. You got a little tail, you just pull it, boom, unravels. So that's kind of neat. And what I've done is I've wrapped handles of tools, like I said, and this little needle nose pliers I use for a lot of projects. I love it. It's got comfortable handles. I took the rubber handles off. I just took a retractable knife and I just sliced the rubber right off of there, because rubber gets nasty after a while. And I just wrapped it with some small synthetic cord, and it's comfortable. Now it's good. I get good grip. It's comfortable. I like it way better than some nasty rubber that these things come with. I mean, the metal is fine too, but I like to, in this case, I wrapped it, and it makes a good grip, a good tool, and so I like it. If you didn't know it already, then now you know the whipping knot. There is one point I want to make before leaving this topic about wrapping objects with cord, and that is about wrapping objects of uneven diameter, one end to the other. For example, the diameter of the neck of an axe handle is usually not uniform and will normally taper down away from the head. Now, I mentioned wrapping the neck of a handle to provide some degree of protection against shock, and especially with larger axes where the possibility of accidental overstrikes while chopping or splitting wood is greater, this can be a helpful safeguard. And we have several different options available to us for achieving this. We could wrap a strip of deer hide around several times to provide a cushion area and secure it in place with rawhide strips. Or we could cover the frontal area with a slab of maybe 10-ounce cowhide and just lace it together on the backside like this. But if we wish to create a permanent tight wrapping of cord, I discovered that it's much easier to start our windings at the smaller diameter end and work our way towards the thicker end while keeping our wraps tight together, rather than trying to wind downhill, so to speak, where our coils of rope tend to want to slide apart, sliding towards the smaller diameter and loosening our overall wrap. It just doesn't work very well going this way, winding toward the smaller end. This is just one of those minor details that is good to keep in mind, and you can see here with the stock of a long gun, in case I wanted a supply of cord with the weapon, it's almost always better to start at the smaller end and work your way toward the larger end than the other way around. So just a nice little thing to keep in mind. Well, now we've arrived at the end of this video, and it's time for me to sign off for now. This is my first run at attempting a video like this, and I sure learned a lot. I hope it was at least somewhat informative. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll return soon with more creative ideas. This ran a bit longer than I anticipated, So I've decided to create a sequel with this cordage theme. There are a few knots that I use quite a bit that are super handy and that I consider worthy of conversation. So you'll definitely want to check that out when it's posted. By now you may have noticed how much I enjoy these little show and tell discussions. Right now I'm wearing this 18th century style shirt that I sewed by hand, and I wore it on a 3-day wilderness outing in the summer of 2001. Anyway, until next time, stay creative, and I look forward to our next visit.